Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. You notice there are two people here today. They both have white or taupe-ish backgrounds, but one of them happens to be my good friend John Spinks. Scott, it's your show. I'll let you do all the introductions, but I'll save a story for after that.
Oh, good to know that there's history and stories to go along with that.
Yes.
I'll be plugging you in later for that. So today we're joined by John Spinks, who's a technical contributor in the Red Hat Management Products, business unit.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking about the suite of products that Red Hat produces to help give you better insight and better control over your Red Hat products, specifically Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So,
Yes.
John, I'll let you take away your own introduction there.
Yeah, as mentioned, I handle several products within the management business unit. We work a lot with our friends over at the Ansible side for any sort of automation, but the primary model that we work in is the products I work with help to manage RHEL. So I focus primarily on Red Hat Insights, Red Hat Smart Management, and that Smart Management subscription includes Red Hat Satellite. So all those little bits and bobbles are my day-to-day life, and we're happy to talk a little bit about all the ways that our product helps to support your product.
Nice.
Well, welcome.
Yes, indeed.
So for those people who haven't looked at Red Hat Insights for a while, concurrent with the RHEL 8.3 launch, there was a really significant expansion of what was made available as part of Insights. So, John, you want to tell us a little bit about those changes and some of the new stuff that people may not have seen?
We'll do history hour with Red Hat Insights because there's a lot that goes on in that space. I was just thinking, I'm like, wow, Summit last year, almost a year ago, there's been a lot that's happened since then. So I'm actually going to go back a little bit past that. Is we've had a product out there called Red Hat Insights. It's actually been around now for, I think, around 6 years. And its original goal in life was, hey, when you call up Red Hat and you open a support ticket, there's a very high chance that we already know about the issue that you've hit. I think the number, as we've done research internally, the number is something like 85% of all customer cases, like another customer has hit it already. So Insights was originally made kind of like what you might have with your storage systems, where it's got a call home functionality. And we basically say, if we detect there's an issue, we can tell you about the issue, hopefully before you hit it. So the idea is predictive analytics. So we can let you know about something that's going to happen, as well as prescriptive analytics, where we want to tell you how to fix it. So years ago, when this was first created, it cost extra money. So it was an extra thing that you needed to buy for each RHEL host you had to manage. That's been a long time ago. For I think 2 years, the way that Insights actually works is it is part of your RHEL subscription. So anybody that's watching this right now, if you have RHEL, you have Insights. And that's true whether it's a RHEL plus Smart Management premium support subscription, or if you've got one of the new developer subscriptions. You have Insights if you have RHEL. It's really that simple. There's no charges. All you got to do is activate it.
Right.
So what we did back at Summit last year is we took that original idea of, hey, let's just predict things. And we said, what else do people really want to do with their RHEL systems? And it's awareness of issues that may happen in vulnerability. Like, hey, what are all the CVEs that are present in my environment? Compliance issues. If you use an OpenSCAP and you've got to adhere to HIPAA, how do my systems compare to HIPAA compliance? Drift. How do I go ahead and compare system A that I just promoted from development to production to system B that's been running in production for 6 months? Compare those two systems together. So there's a lot of those kind of capabilities where we've gone way beyond just the normal, hey, these are things that we detect might be happening in your environment. Whereas we've tried to make it a full suite of, here's all the things that you can do with managing RHEL from one place. So if you've got 1,000 systems all registered to Insights or more, from one single console, you can see the entire impact across your estate. So I'll pause for breath.
A lot of these features, or some of them, like CVE reporting or update reporting, that was built into Satellite and has been in Red Hat Satellite for a long time. But now with this expansion of Insights, customers that are not using Smart Management and therefore not Satellite can also leverage these features if they register their systems with Insights.
So, and John, I remember you telling me about a case where like Insights found, an incompatibility between like a version of Oracle database and the kernel that was running, and like, tell that story, like, because that I think is the best Insight story I've heard. And
so it's been
around, yeah.
That's one of the older stories we have too. It was one of the customers that's been using it for a really long time, and they were trying out Insights, and at the same time that they were going through the evaluation, they had cases open with Red Hat, they had cases open with Oracle because their rack database just was having issues. It was mostly performance issues, but they're like, hey, how do we fix these things? And they were going through the support processes, and it was kind of I was not involved in these cases, so I'm hearing this story secondhand for this part of it. But it was a lot of back and forth, try this, try that. And the account rep was like, hey, let's give this Insights thing a try and just see what it finds. And we hook it up, configure it, and it finds a total of 10 issues. And they're kind of across all different areas. Some of them are RHEL issues. Some of them are, say, networking issues or kernel issues. Some of them are actually Oracle issues. So when we talk about Insights, it's not just that RHEL layer that we're looking at. We're looking at some of the applications as well. Nowadays, we look at hypervisors, we look at cloud-based services. So if you're running on AWS or Azure, we have recommendations available for those environments as well. But for this particular issue, they found 10 different problems between RHEL and Oracle. And when they fix that set of issues, and part of what Insights does is it will detect the issues for you, and then it recommends how to fix it. It actually generates an Ansible playbook for you. So they just went in, click, generate playbook, fix the issues. Of course, they went through other change control processes and blah, blah, blah. But, so they fixed the issues, but that resolved not only the RHEL issues that were detected, but it resolved those Oracle problems that were going on. And,
and closed slews of cases. Yeah.
Yeah. As wonderful as RHEL is, like, you don't run RHEL just because you're like, hey, I want to run RHEL. Let's go run RHEL. Like, you've got a business workload that you depend upon. And you want to make sure that that's running at its peak. And that's kind of what happened in this case. We had another one that you may not have heard about, Chris. This is a newer one that Tam told me about, as they were working with one of their customers. They were evaluating Insights. Yeah. And the customer's like, dude, I think your software's broken. Like, what do you mean? It's like, it's telling me that there's a bonding problem, and we don't use network bonding here. So this is obviously just a fluke. Well, we're detecting this for a reason. Let's look into it a little bit more. Right. And come to find out that one of the admins fat fingered a NMCLI command, partially enabled network bonding. And had they not run Insights, they never would have even known about this thing. So, it wasn't causing them any real issues at this point, but it was just a funny conversation that they're like, yeah, you're detecting something we don't use. So this is obviously a false positive. And
this might be why you need some kind of configuration management tool of some sort that maybe I've worked on before,
That's
right?
It.
Like, yeah,
That's it.
The fact it can detect drift is pretty funny. That's interesting. Yeah.
So you were telling us about Advisor, and then we talked about some of the additional tools. So I know that you're not supposed to love your children more than the others, but in this case, which child do you love the most, John?
I'm a bad one to ask for favorites on, because I don't pick a lot of favorites in life. But if you really think about the reason that most people choose a favorite anything, be it a favorite child, a favorite pizza topping, a favorite service within Insights, they're choosing it because it meets a need, it builds a comfort, it fills a hole in their life. So I think for Insights, there are a number of services now, and it depends on what your need is. So I'm going to list through the services we have. We have Advisor, which is the service that tells you about recommended issues. It tells you about best practices. It's the one, that original prescriptive, predictive one I was talking about earlier. There's also vulnerability, which handles, all the CVEs. So it lets you know about any CVE that's impacting within your RHEL estate. Compliance, open SCAP type compliance, HIPAA, PCI, DSS, patch, what patches are applicable, drift, has my system drifted and what does it state? A newer one is policies, where we basically say, I want to create my own internal requirements. And that could be something like, we don't allow Wireshark, like period. If Wireshark's installed in the system, like I want to be flagged to know about it. Or a more common one, maybe like leave the firewall on. If somebody turns a firewall off, alert me because they've done a bad thing.
Right.
And by a firewall, you mean SE Linux.
We can do that too. Yes.
No. Don't make Dan Walsh cry.
And then we've got a subscription watch or subscriptions, which is just keeps track of your subscription utilization within Red Hat. So if you have no idea how many RHEL or OpenShift subscriptions that you're consuming, it keeps track of that information for you. So out of that big long list, I'd say probably the two I like to show the most frequently are vulnerability, because everybody cares about CVEs. They care about security. Even for customers that already have, you may be thinking, I've got Qualsys, I've got Nexus, I've got a security scanner already. Don't care. What we hear from a lot of folks is a lot of times the security team will run that audit, they'll run that scan, and then they go to the sysadmin and say, here's our big list of issues that we've detected. Prove they're real or disprove that they're real.
Right.
So by having this vulnerability service, we can go through and say, okay, give me the list. Okay, system A, B, C, D, what CVEs exist. Or conversely, you get that email about a new CVE that came out and your boss sends you an email or sends you a text and says, hey, what's our exposure risk? Like, I need to know. Like, my bosses are asking me, CVE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many systems have we got exposed? I need to know ASAP. I want it in 20 minutes. Go into Insights, type in the CVE number, export you out a list, you're done. I mean, it's really just that fast. And
so one quibble on that. It only shows CVEs that Red Hat has mitigated already. Right. So it could be that we get an email that says CVE 123, but Red Hat hasn't mitigated against it. And so vulnerability won't show it yet. But the Red Hat product security portal you can put that in there and it will tell you whether it's remediated or not. And if it is remediated, then you can go over to vulnerability service and see across your whole population who has it, who doesn't have it.
Yep.
But just that kind of inventorying capability is massively helpful in so many ways.
I do want to plug one other resource that's coming up next week. So next week, there is a Red Hat Events webinar with product security, specifically Probe, on how we grade CVEs and vulnerabilities and the work that we do to work with like MITRE and other entities to make sure that we're in sync about what that is. So if you're interested in how Red Hat grades vulnerabilities and how that's different from or maybe different from what you're seeing from different data sources. Next week, February 17th, there's a webinar. You can find it on the Red Hat events page with Probe.
Okay.
And in part of that, I'm sure they're going to talk about the customer security and awareness program, where they create something they call security rules for particular CVEs, where they actually go a little bit more in depth. And it's not just, hey, what information does MITRE publish about it? Or it actually goes in and says, hey, particular to RHEL, here's some additional impacts that you might not know about. Here's some related CVEs that this might affect. Those security rules are highlighted on Red Hat site. They're also highlighted within Insights itself. So we do another level of detail and analysis on certain CVEs that are identified as high impact.
So now that I've nitpicked on vulnerability a little bit, sorry, I did also want to talk a little bit about compliance, because in terms of children I love in Insights world, Like, uh, I'm an uncle, so I get to choose, right, which ones I like the
Nice.
most.
Nice.
So
Let me cover my second favorite, and then we'll roll back around to compliance if that's cool. Because I did say 2. I don't want to lose my second, but because it wasn't going to be compliance. Sorry.
Well, I like compliance because for a lot of those regulated industries, like healthcare, for
But
a number
compliance
of
is
years,
worth digging into. Yeah.
well, for a number of years, we've offered OpenSCAP scanning tools,
Yeah.
but it produced the reports locally on the box, and then you had to like do that on every single box, and then you had to get the results somehow. And I think that the compliance tool offered through Insights gives like a great population-wide view without having to go out and touch every single box to get the individual box view.
There's also some other really cool things that the compliance service does. So we will go ahead and dig into this one. So the compliance service, one of the nice things about it is it creates the compliance policy through cloud.redhat.com itself, right through Insights. So if you're going to go in, you're going to create a DISA STIG, or you're going to use the standard system security guide, you go into compliance, you click new policy. It gives you the option to do some level of tailoring right there within Insights. You don't have to go dig out to SCAP Workbench or anything like that. You can customize that policy right inside of Insights. It doesn't do direct rule editing of like the in-depth values yet, but it does allow you to disable certain rules that don't seem important to you, or if they don't matter to your organization, you can unselect those rules, or you can add additional rules that are just part of the SSG that may not originally been part of that policy. From there, you then select the host that you want to apply the policy to, and then you get all your centralized reporting right inside of Insight. So it's like, it's not just go to host A and look at the PCI results for host A and then go to host B and look at host B. You can look at it from that policy level and say, I care about PCI compliance across my entire estate. What is my percentage passing and failing across all my REL? And then which particular rules aren't being passed right now? And hey, just like for the remediation, there's Ansible playbooks in there to resolve those issues as well. Not all of them, a little bit less for compliance than it is for like vulnerability or advisor, just due to the nature of what it is. But for still a lot of these issues, we generate that playbook for you, and all you got to do is run it.
Well, and the idea that you can disable rules for things is also pretty important, because a lot of the security standards, they have guidelines, but for example, DISA-STIG, you can choose not to apply a piece of guidance as long as you document why you're not applying it and have approval of not applying it, right? And so having the ability to do that, so that you're not constantly looking at a dashboard that's all yellow or all red, and you expect it to be all yellow or all red, like that's where do you find the things that are broken if it's all broken, right?
Yeah.
So being able to turn that off so that you can really concentrate on those issues that become more critical is key to any tool.
And there's a couple pieces of that we've taken into Insights as well. Generally speaking, a lot of customers that have these compliance issues, they know they're not going to get 100% passing rate if you're using like the full, you're not modifying PCI or you're not modifying HIPAA, because you have to run your business on a computer, that you're not going to get 100% compliance. So we allow at a policy level you to say, hey, I do expect though that my baseline is somewhere around like 90% or 95%. And if I exceed that threshold, alert me, like let me know. And so we can say 95% is probably considered passing for us. You can still delve down into the individual systems if you want to, but it doesn't show up on your dashboard as a giant failure just because there's a rule in there that you haven't managed to adhere to yet.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I just dropped a link to it. The RHEL 8 DISA-STIG just got released, so that'll definitely help some folks.
Yeah, it's been a draft for a while.
Yeah.
I think it shows up right now in draft already in the compliance service, but I got to see if
it's
in
the installer
inside Insights.
Yeah, and the installer for 8.3 too. But 8.4 is is soonish. So,
Yes.
yeah.
There's another thing with compliance that a lot of people just simply aren't aware of, and it's that the SSG version is actually fairly well tied to the version of RHEL that you're running, and that's not a widely known thing. So if you're just you go do a Yum update, you're running a little bit older RHEL box, you're running like a RHEL 7.7 or something, you just go do a Yum update, and that updates your security guide to the latest. You may actually be getting incorrect information about your passing status, about your compliance status, because it is pretty well matched, the version of RHEL to the version of SSG, but that wasn't greatly documented until recently here. So now that's, I think, in the RHEL docs. I know it's in the Insights docs because the compliance team within Insights went through an absolute ton of work to try to map those together and get a nice table in place. So Insights will let you know if you're out of compliance with the version of SSG that's on the host compared to the version of RHEL.
Cool.
And SSG, for those of us who don't know, is what?
System Security Guide.
Thank you.
Not the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's two components that the Insights Compliance Service needs, and one is OpenSCAP needs to be installed, and then the other is the SSG, the RHEL Security Guide. So those two components get installed along with Insights. And Insights itself, even though we haven't mentioned it, if you're RHEL 7, it's 2 commands, and if you're RHEL 8, it's 1. So we've made the effort 50% less in RHEL 8, just so you have a better experience. And that's just Yum install Insights client. It's part of the base RHEL repo, and then register Insights client -- register.
So in case people are curious, how much data is actually sent home?
So the data itself is really metadata. Like, I want to hammer that point pretty hard, because I think a lot of times, and this is probably our biggest issue with getting people to adopt Insights, is because it does call home. Most of what it looks like is system profile type information. And then depending on the rule, like if you're running in Amazon, we're going to collect a couple system facts about Amazon. We're going to collect a couple system facts about SAP or SQL. We're not looking at usernames. We're not looking at passwords. We're not looking at your data, because we don't care. We need that stuff. But basically what we're looking at is system facts. In terms of sizing and upload, last time I ran the stats, I think an average upload was 384K.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's tiny in scope.
Yeah.
And it's really important to note that you have 100% control of anything sent to Red Hat. So if you say, hey, IP addresses and host names, not allowed to leave my property, full stop.
Sure. Yeah.
Easy. Like, it's actually those two, IP address and host names. That's a client configuration. You change the value from no to yes, and it's obfuscated.
Nice.
If it's something more complex, like, hey, MyCore, we don't allow the name MyCore to leave our domain, period, full stop. Or we have service Athena that we're building in the background, and we want to make sure that the word Athena never leaves. There's a YAML style deny list that you can put into place where you can put certain terms in, and it will actually go through the collection. It'll pull any references to any of that kind of information.
That's awesome.
There is, and Chris, I think you've got a link to the RHEL security, the Insights security page. That's cloud.redhat.com/security/insights. Yeah. That is the one-stop shop that we've put together. It's our model of a trust page, where essentially that tells you everything that we do with data and Insights. And it also has a link to our Insights FAQ. So that has a ton of information in it. So yeah, it should not be scary. I think that's the number one blocker. I had a customer call earlier today with a group of customers, our Red Hat Accelerator team, who is their internal advocates for Red Hat. So they're I said internal, they're customer advocates for Red Hat, where they go through and essentially they get updates on what goes on. And we have them in, I think, pretty much all geographies, many countries. And some of them are like, hey, I'm in Europe. I can't use Insights.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You can't? I need to go talk to my German banking customer that's actively using Insights and see how they did it. Because Yeah, we do have people for insights in, I think, all geos. Yep,
Yeah.
definitely all geos. I can't say all countries for matter of fact. And
Well,
pretty
that'd be
much
a lot of people.
exactly. Like I haven't run that stat, but definitely all industries, all
Mhm.
geographies are using insights. So we do not target personally identifiable information. I did have one customer challenge us on this, and they were like, you gathered my company name, and in my country that's considered personally identifiable information. We're like, well, that's odd. We shouldn't have done that. Like, can we get on a call with you and look at this and figure out what happened? And
Mhm.
turns out that somebody had created a service with the name of the company. And when we gathered the system facts for running services, we gathered the name of that service, which happened to be the company name.
That would just be
And
in
we're
the
like,
PS, right? I mean,
yeah,
that would be there. I mean, that would be all over the place.
Exactly. So that's when that deny list came into, like,
Right.
okay, like
Mhm.
rather than just saying, hey, you guys messed up, if you're really that particular about it, use this deny list. It'll scrape the information. It'll validate that it's not in there. And you can create, like, if you're concerned about this, you're security conscious, as you should be.
Mhm.
You can create an insights collection without sending us any data at all. It's covered in that security guide he linked to. So you can create the collection, you can inspect it for yourself, and you can see everything that insights is looking at. It should not be scary information.
No,
It should not be anything that you're concerned about.
it's way less than an SOS report. Yeah.
Way.
So.
The only time that we get kind of sizable uploads is if you are using compliance, because the compliance report itself gets sent as a payload component that takes the size and blows it up a little bit, because they send that report on to insights. That's the only time it really gets sizable. But it's packaged in an envelope, so it's not like you're sending XML files over the wire.
Right.
So we pulled you off on a tangent for a while. I
I'm good
wanted
at
to
that.
return and say, what was the second favorite child service?
The second one is Drift. Drift is got a few different capabilities, but its reason in life is really, it worked in development. It doesn't work in production, but the systems are exactly the same. Are they? Let's check. So what Drift allows you to do is, first of all, you can create a baseline, and you can create a baseline in a number of ways. You can do it completely from scratch, where you say, I want to self-define every system fact. And then we're going to compare those facts to the collection that Insights gets. So it could be architecture. So is this x86? It could be the kernel version. It could be version of SAP. So you can define those manually, which is really interesting if you're only interested in a subset of facts. You're, hey, identify for me everything that's running RHEL 8.0, 8.1, or 8.2. You can do it that way. Like, so I want to know about these. Another way to do it is you can take an existing system and you can create a baseline from it. And that's the way I typically do it, just because it's faster. All of us sysadmins by nature are a little lazy, a little efficient. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, there you go. I like efficiency.
Efficient. Yeah. So you take it, maybe you got a gold image going on. You got a gold image, you run it into Insights, you make sure that everything's working properly. And then from that gold image, okay, now this is the blessed image that we're going to be creating machines off of from now on. Create a baseline from that image. And then all you really need to do is you want to delete the things that wouldn't be unique. So you would want to delete the MAC address, because nobody else should have the same MAC address. Nobody else should have the same IP address if you're gathering that type of information. So little bit of manipulation of the facts that are connected, and you got a baseline. Usually takes me like less than 5 minutes. Once you have that baseline, you can compare systems to it. So if you've got a system that maybe it was running perfectly fine last week, and this week it's just not running right, you can compare it to the baseline and see what's changed. You can also run it to historical system profiles. We can go back 7 days with Insights, because we don't keep Insights data for very long. Maximum today is 2 weeks that we keep Insights data. Drift can only go back 1 week. So you can go back and say, this thing worked perfectly well last Wednesday, and
right,
what happened? And go back, compare last Wednesday to Monday, and then you find out that somebody applied a patch over the weekend, and you go, oh, that's what happened. That guy. So just being able to have those, and any of this information, you can export it out into a CSV file, a JSON, so you can capture these real quick. And even though I've talked about using the GUI and using cloud.redhat.com, everything in Insights is fully backed by APIs. So if you're getting really massive comparisons, you probably want to pull that from an API anyway, not from within that UI. But Drift is really cool because it has some of these features. It gives you a good feeling of the facts that are collected by Insights. So if you, like for SAP, for example, like we capture the SID, we capture the SAP version and several other SAP specific facts. If you've got a good handle of the facts that we're looking at, it makes it a lot easier to go into another service like policies and create your own custom policy, which is based off the facts we collect. So once you understand those, it makes it a lot easier to use some of the other services.
So you said you talked about everything being API backed. And one of the other things I wanted to bring up is that the Insights team has been doing a ton of work on essentially building in features that allow you to operate at scale. And I know that not everyone thinks that way. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, I've got 5 things. Let me just go out and SSH these 5 boxes. But pretty soon you're at like 100 or 1,000, and that strategy doesn't work anymore. And so not only is everything API based, so you can query it all and get it down in a format that you can then filter further, but you guys have put in things like tags in the UI. The ability to export reports is also tremendous because you'll have somebody that's like, hey, I need to know what my population is, blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, I'm your auditor and I need to know information about your population. And without the ability to export that stuff, it's like, what do you do? Right? You'd have to copy and paste and make a doc and like all kinds of other ridiculous things.
Yeah, one of the things that you kind of started out asking about the big change we made at Summit last year, but we also, a lot like our other products, we have releases every 6 months, but Insights is SaaS because we're putting out changes almost constantly. I swear every time I demo Insights, I find something new. It's usually something small that somebody that doesn't use it as often as I do probably wouldn't even notice, but they're changing things all the time. They're updating, they're adding new features. So the tagging capability that you're talking about, it really went into effect strongly with our November release. That's our most recent. Our next one will probably be some event coming up here in a couple months that we tend to align releases to. But the tag feature is really nice because I can go in and say, hey, I just want to see my systems. I just want to see SAP systems. I just want to see Scott's systems. And depending on how they're tagged, you can go look at them, put a filter in place essentially, and only look at the systems you care about. I will note that is a evolving feature. It's a relatively new feature. It was released in November, so not every service respects it 100% yet, like the compliance service we were talking about earlier. It doesn't yet respect that filter, but it will very soon. Like that's something that they're actively working on. Because Insights is pretty large in scale in terms of the number of services and teams that we have. So they're not all able to adopt the features as soon as they're released. We have to release them at the platform level for the Insights platform, right. And then the services have to adopt them. And some are, depending on the backlog, just a little faster than the others to do it.
So we're getting to the point where we usually transition off to demo, but I have one last question. What's something you see someone doing all the time in Insights or RHEL that you wish they do differently?
The first one is just activate Insights. We know about this feature, the 3 of us chatting right now. Like it's not a secret between the folks that have been working with these products really heavily. Even within our own Red Hat community, not a lot of people know about it. And then when we actually surveyed our customer bases, we did a survey recently. Anybody that had opened a ticket against RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, in the last 6 months or something, we surveyed. Like, you opened a support case. Did you use Insights along the process? Because some of the support team are now encouraging use because it can proactively detect a lot of these things. So you don't have to call support. We'll tell you about it and we'll tell you how to fix it. Still the overwhelming majority, I want to say it was either close to or over 50% of the respondents still had no idea what Insights was. So this is something that you have. It's part of the value of your existing subscription. It's part of what you pay Red Hat for. Really encourage you just to turn this on, use it, see what it does. It adds an absolute ton of value. And I do want to add one more thing before we move topics. If you also have smart management, we spent this entire time talking about just Insights. We haven't talked about smart management or satellite, which are some of the other capabilities that we have. Smart management has a play here as well. If you already are a satellite user, you can activate Insights from within satellite using a remote execution playbook as a system role built right into satellite to turn it on all your systems. It will by default proxy all of the information that's gathered through the satellite. So you don't have to go in and worry about each host individually having to go connect or opening firewall ports or anything like that. Satellite is already your trusted single point of contact for your network. Use it. It uses the same port. You don't have to open anything new. It just happens over port 443, and it just converts it over, sends it over to the API. Where it gets really cool is with Satellite 6.7, so again, roughly Summit a year ago, we introduced a feature called Cloud Connector. It's part of the Smart Management subscription, so only satellite users today can use this. And what it does is create a WebSocket between cloud.redhat.com and your satellite. Mm-hmm. So as you find these issues, we detect that there's a vulnerability, there's a CV out there, and you want to address that as soon as possible. You have your estate connected through your satellite. Click, I want to fix this. Click, create a playbook. Click, run the playbook. It takes that playbook, it sends it onto your satellite, and it runs it. It uses your capsule infrastructure, so it will send it from Insights to satellite to capsule to hosts. Uses Ansible remote execution on the host and runs that playbook for you. There is, of course, all the security measures are in place. You have to have an identified user that's allowed to do that on the satellite side. You have to have an identified user that's allowed to do it on the Cloud.Red Hat side. And you have to have all of your SSH keys in place. So basically, if you're using satellite, the only additional step is to set up Cloud Connector and identify people on cloud.redhat.com that are allowed to do this.
Yeah, at some point, we probably need to talk a little bit more about satellite. Maybe that's a future episode. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen and transition over to demo time. So John, you may recall this. We made this lab together, and I think after this show, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead and add some user credentials people can use, and I'm going to publish it to the main lab.redhat.com page. But for now, I'm just going to run through what it's got, and I'll use my own credential for logging in and looking at stuff. So we talked about how in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, a lot of builds for RHEL 8 will have Insights client already installed. If you choose to do an at-base install, and that's the only thing you're providing, it is not part of that. But if you do something like server with GUI and some of the other pretty common builds, it will be there automatically. But it's a yum install. It's like this on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 as well. And then after you've got it installed, you just Insights client register, and it collects and sends your first batch of system facts up to the Insights service.
And as you're going through that on cloud.redhat.com itself under Insights, there is a register systems item in that left-hand menu bar of Insights. And that's actually going to walk you through all these steps. And it's going to ask you a little bit more intelligent questions too. Like, hey, if you want to do this at scale, first it asks you, hey, are you using Subscription Manager to do this? Or are you, using satellite? Or what's your what's your registration methodology? How do you want to deploy? Do you want to do it singular? Do you want to do it at scale using either Puppet or Ansible? And then if you choose manual, it's going to give you these commands. If you choose Puppet or Ansible, it's going to give you the associated playbook or module.
So I'm going to log into the Insights application on cloud.redhat.com in just a second. And so to find this box, because they're all kind of randomly generated, I needed to pull up the host name for it. And then I also ran Insights client status. This will just report whether it's registered or not. And we can see that our registration was successful. All right, so cloud.redhat.com. And I logged in because I was using it this morning in a webinar that I was doing, so yay. Here in the Red Hat Insights tile is quick links to the individual sub-applications like Advisor, which would tell me any configuration or questionable or concerning things that it found on the system. Vulnerability, we talked about, that's your security updates that are outstanding. Compliance we talked about, and these others. So these are quick links to it. And if you just hit open, I think it takes you to Advisor. Oh no, it takes you to the dashboard. So this is also newish, where it'll actually give you this kind of snapshot of what's going on with the systems that you've got registered that you could take a look at. All right, so let me go to Advisor. Actually, I want to go to Systems. And I'm going to find this system. He is ED4F. Oh, he's right here at the top. And if we pull up the listing for this system, we can see that the SSH Keep Alive settings are something that can cause problems, and it's already toggled open. So it tells me a little bit more about what the issue is and why it would be a problem. And then as John reflected on earlier, here's what we could do to apply a change that would resolve this issue, right? Step-by-step guidance. This one also has a playbook that you can download and execute for it. And then if there's more than one way to solve the problem, it usually gives alternate methods if you would prefer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and apply this remediation that it recommends. So this is, I think, SSHD. All right. So it was client keep alive and client alive max count. Nope, maybe it's SSH config. Nope. Live demo, what could possibly go wrong? There it is.
Remember, we
All
love
right.
failure on this show.
Do we love failure though?
I mean, I
don't know. I'm kind of partial to success.
I mean, it's nice to be able to see how you fix stuff sometimes.
All right, client alive interval. All right, so that's currently set to 0. And the recommended remediation is to set it to 900. And I think it said client alive max count should be set to 3, which is the default, but I'll go ahead and uncomment it to make it explicit. All right, so I've made those 2 changes. Save my file. There we go. And let me go ahead and re-upload my system information. That way I don't have to wait for the already scheduled task of uploading information. I can just do it right now. And what I should find is when I return back over to the Insights Advisor application and reload it, that should no longer be displayed for the system. Why are you smiling, John Spanks? You're giving me concern.
Just wait. Go back to your other tab. Your current settings are as follow. Use the following values.
Oh, fine.
But it does say you can use the slightly less secure values, so you're okay.
Fine. Reading. So it's 300 and 0. Okay. All right, let's try this one more time.
Scott's found that if I smile too much, I'm just going to watch the train wreck.
I would expect nothing less, John Spanks.
Oh, look, the forest is burning. Smile.
Well, do you remember when Dorito was on a couple weeks ago? He did the exact same thing to me. He just watched me slowly train wreck it.
Like the people you invite on the show seem to set you up a lot.
I say I'm a sucker for heckling.
He totally did it to himself.
All right. So after I resolve that one, there's no additional things that are required. So no recommendations are available. Similarly, if I take a look at vulnerability and I look at the same system, so it showed on the dashboard that there are 14 CVEs available. So here they are. I wonder if I just go over here and do an update. This might take a minute.
So while that runs, jump back
yes.
over to the other tab real quick. I'd like to point out a couple things.
Yes, sir.
Earlier, we mentioned, I talked about the Customer Security Awareness Program. I mentioned security rules, their CVEs that we've gone and done a little bit more introspection into. They're notated here on the screen. The very first one there has that eyeball icon, and that notates a security rule for the vulnerability service. So that's telling us that that's one that we've gone through. We've done a little bit of extra looking at, and we've added some more contextual information that's important to RHEL. Also want to point out all the way to the right there, you have two columns, business risk and status. So our severity column is primarily set by the information that we're getting from the databases on the CVE. But we do know that while we've set the important of severity, it might not be as important to your business. So something like the third one down there that's listed as moderate, maybe to your business, that's a really, really critical one. So what we allow you to do is to assign your own business risk to CVEs. So you can say, yeah, I know Red Hat says this is moderate, but to us, we got to fix this thing. So you can actually go through and set that. Go ahead and click into one of those CVEs if you don't mind. But that works too. Yeah, I was going to say click it itself. But yeah, the other thing that we've got is the CVE status. So if you drop down on the status menu, one of the things that we can do here is actually walk you through the entire remediation process for CVEs. So the default status is not reviewed. We haven't looked at this. But as you actually go through the point of fixing this across your estate, you can put in there, hey, is it in review, or we've accepted the risk, or we've scheduled for patches. And you can put in a justification note just for the status, just like you can for the business risk. That also helps you later on as you sort it. So yeah.
So you want me to click on the CVE number?
Yeah, either way. Yeah, if you click on that, that's going to give you the other information about the CVE. So a little bit more detailed view. If you're used to looking at these kind of rules as well, we put in the CVSS vector information. So if you're used to looking at them, you can see a little bit more up CVSS 3.0 vector on the right. So you can see from there that your attack vector is network, your attack complexity is high. And if you click on the question mark, it will expand all of those out if you're not as familiar as looking at some of these things. But rather than making you go out to the CVE database and figure it out for yourself, we've just kind of scraped that information and pulled it right here into Insights.
Yeah, and it also gives you this this list of systems that are registered to Insights that have this outstanding CVE for them. So
yeah.
I was called in a panic a couple weeks ago, and so it's like, we're not using. Are we SolarWinds? Are we using SolarWinds? It's like, no. But if there is ever a question on whether I don't know, Spectre. Are we susceptible to Spectre? What systems are susceptible to Spectre? You can find it pretty easily.
Yeah. And if you want to go back into one of those CVEs, or that one right there is fine. Right below CVEs, there's a checkbox. Like so, expose systems. Click the checkbox that's on the left of name. That's going to select every system that has that CVE, and then click that remediate button. Pretty much every one has a Ansible playbook for vulnerability. Type in just a name, temp, or whatever, it doesn't matter. So rather than going through the way that Scott did and either just do a yum update or fix it manually, you can also create these playbooks. What this is doing is telling you what action we're taking. In this case, we're fixing this particular CVE, what the resolution is, if there's a reboot required, and the number of systems impacted. Go ahead and click create. And now in the upper right, you get that hyperlink, tap on test under playbook created. Yep. I want to click it, but I can't quite. And then this is where I was talking earlier. You've got that download playbook button. So if you hit that, it's going to pull down that YAML file. It's going to come down in a zip, so you'll have to extract it.
Yeah, I'm not sharing that window, so
that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about it. But this is also the place that I was saying earlier that we create that playbook for you. So if you want to do this in a more automated fashion, here's how. And if you also have that smart management capability, you're using Satellite, you configure that cloud connector, and that's where you have that execute playbook button. Notice it was grayed out there. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out while you were waiting for those to finish.
Cool. All right, so I'm re-uploading my Insights data, right, just so I can get it more immediately for the sake of demonstration than waiting for its automatic check-in, later today when we're not streaming. All right, and so now if I go to vulnerability systems, so it has cleaned up some. I think it's still processing my my upload of data. Let's try one more time.
Yeah, only that security rule is left, so there may just be something additional that you need to do for that one because it is a security rule. Maybe.
Oh, you know what? It might be the reboot. The playbook set an automatic reboot, so maybe that it's like a kernel. Oh, let's see, and it needs to be booted into it. No, HTTPD. You may need to restart it.
Yeah, but basically in a short amount of time, you've identified, several CVEs and a best practice recommendation that existed on this brand new box that you spun up, and you've resolved the majority of them here in just a few quick moments. Yeah. And you've been doing it manually, but you can use that playbook method and create that playbook and pull it down.
Don't be a hater, John. Nice. Don't be a hater on my manual tasks.
I'm not a hater. I'm just saying, you don't have to just type one system at a time.
You don't have to be a Scott. That's all I'm saying. All right. So just real quick, because we're almost out of time. Compliance service. So on this box, we don't have any compliance policies set. So I don't have any systems that are checking in with that data. So you could go through and use the wizard here to create a new policy. Patch. Let's take a look at this one. I think that one's going to be empty too, because I just did a yum update -y, not only updating my security related updates, but I applied all the updates. So there's one available enhancement update, looks like. Not sure why that one didn't get picked up. I do. I love enhancements. It's important to note that for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, we have essentially stopped producing this kind of update. We typically will now only produce important or critical security errata updates for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 because it's in maintenance phase 2. We also produce critical and important security updates for RHEL 6 if you are using an extended lifecycle support add-on. So if you're RHEL 6 plus ELS, you can get those. But we're still producing the full gamut of bug fix and enhancement updates for RHEL 8. And before you know it, we'll be doing that for RHEL 9 as well. All right,
Soon
Drift.
enough, yeah.
Yeah. So Drift, again, I've not configured any baselines, but we can create a baseline. Oh, there's some already in here from some other folks that have tried it out.
Nice.
And we could do comparisons between boxes. So, and then the playbook that John had me create to replace my very Scott-esque way of doing things is down here in remediations, right? There's the test playbook that I created.
Nice.
So,
yeah, so I do highly recommend anybody who's a satellite user or has smart management already. So it's anybody that's bought either RHEL plus smart management, RHEL for SAP, smart management is a standalone add-in for the RHEL. If you're already using satellite, take a close look into Cloud Connector because that allows you to help remediate these issues simply pretty much with a click of a button at scale. I do think the satellite integration here is really, really tight. It's really solid. It's getting even more improved in future releases. So there's most of the enhancements are going on with this satellite insights integration. On the back end, a lot of the engineers are either cross-trained or report up through the same chain. So there's really good work there. I did see a note in the chat about the integration with Tower. So I wanted to talk a minute and chat about that. Within the satellite UI and within the Tower UI, there is an Insights menu item. And again, Insights has been around for a long time, and the word Insights has morphed a bit because it used to just be the service that we now know, Advisor. So if you're looking at Insights within Satellite or within Tower, when we say Insights, what we really mean is the Advisor service. It's just that one service. So if you're inside Tower, you're looking at a host from a host context, and it's showing you all of the feature, all of the recommendations that we have for that host. That particular feature, from my understanding, and I'm not on the Ansible team, but from my understanding, that is the portion that is being deprecated. Is in the future from within Tower, when you select a host that's synced in through an inventory, you won't see any of the Insights recommendations. You would want to go out to cloud.redhat.com to see those. Within Satellite, you will still see those. We're actually still having all the Advisor pieces listed within Satellite, but it's just Advisor. All of these other services aren't being listed. And for Satellite, it's partially because we have other ways to do that in Satellite. Vulnerability, compliance, patch, all pretty much already built in functionality of Satellite. Drift is not in Satellite, and it was in an older Satellite 5, but it's not there today. However, within Tower, one thing you still can do is you can create an Insight sync job, and you can sync up any playbooks. Like we just created that one remediation playbook for this job. We created it in cloud.redhat.com. Tower is still capable of syncing that. And there is documentation out there on setting up an Insights project. I don't think I grabbed the latest, but in our working doc, Chris, I dropped the link, Tower Docs and Insights, if you want to put that one in the chat. So that functionality is still there, at least in the near term. I am not entirely up to date on the roadmap, but that feature, to my knowledge, is planning to remain at least, in the near term, because we want to be able to enable people that are using Insights or creating Ansible playbooks to get that information over to Tower. So you can create the jobs on cloud.redhat.com and then sync them over to your Tower side. I do feel that the Insights and Satellite/smart management integration is better, but then again, remember that those are the products I work with. So maybe that's a bit of a favored nation clause there. So
hey, maybe. You never know.
So I saw in the chat, and Short, you already replied to this, but JP Dade asked if there was an additional charge for Insights. No, we cannot stress that enough. If you have a RHEL subscription, right? And remember, RHEL subscriptions cover any version of the RHEL. Insights is included in that subscription. If you have a new developer subscription, which includes 16 entitlements for RHEL, it also gives you Insights, because Insights are part of the entitlement for RHEL. So anytime you have a RHEL subscription, it also includes access to insights. And by insights, I mean this entire suite of tools that we just showed you.
And on top of that, if you have the new developer for Teams, that has insights and smart management. So you can even deploy a satellite with developer for Teams. So there's a
developer for Teams is, we said that we were going to make it, and we're working on making it. I don't know if you guys saw last week's episode with Brian Gallagher, or I guess 2 weeks ago episode with Brian Gallagher. We talked about the expanded developer program. One of the things that we're expanding is developer for Teams. I know that we are not at the point of selling it yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I've been sticking my nose in that one though, and smart management is part of that bundle. So you'll have satellite. But regardless, if you have RHEL, the only exclusion I know about in all of Red Hat is RHEL embedded, because embedded by nature has different contractual languages than any other flavor of RHEL. Any other kind of RHEL, you've got insights. All you got to do, turn it on. And it's really simple. If the most complicated version of it is 2 commands. Absolutely check out that security page that Chris linked to. That's got all of the information on the basic, how do we detect your data, to how do you register, to our full FAQ, which I think was at like 30 pages or something last time I had it in a text doc.
Yeah. So when we close out, John, I'm going to update this insights workshop to say that it's a advisor workshop, because that's really what it is. I'm also going to update it so that here it was originally designed to be part of an in-person workshop. Clearly, we're not having in-person workshops anymore. So I'm going to update this screenshot and instructions to actually be a username that people can use. And I'll change it over periodically so that we kind of keep it fresh.
Nice.
But yeah, we've already updated some of these screenshots already to account for some of the new things. But yeah, so it's already out there and it works, and I just need to provide folks a credential for it. And
I got one more resource, Chris, if you don't mind sharing. Just drop that in the link. We've done a lot of different webinars on insights. We've been, ever since we did that last summit release, we've been going through in depth on a lot of the different services. So we have a webinar library out there. They're all at this point pre-recorded. I do expect that we'll be spinning some more back up here in the next month or two. But if you want to learn more about just drift or just policies or just vulnerability, there's a separate webinar for each one of those. I think I attended every one of those if I didn't present on every one of those. So they're pretty well darn in depth. They cover a lot of the how-tos, and there's some really great content out there. So if you want to learn more about insights, that's a great resource for you to go to, even without the hands-on. That's going to delve deep in all the things.
Nice.
Short, I threw in the direct URL to the Insights Workshop. I'll also get it cross-posted on the main lab.redhat.com page as well. But give me about an hour to make all the updates to it. And then...
come on. An hour.
Yeah, man.
45 minutes.
I want to make sure it works and tests and stuffs.
Okay, fine. So
we're in RHEL world. We actually make a plan and validate things.
I'm not sure if I should take that as a slight, or maybe you're just
saying
misinformed.
It's best practices. Other people can do it too, but I know for RHEL we certainly do.
Well, the phrase "best practices" is kind of losing its good connotation. So,
recommended methods. How about that? I don't know.
Fair enough. All right, you ready to wrap this thing up?
Yeah.
John, it was great having you, man. Really good to see you again.
Great spending some time with you guys. Appreciate it.
All right, and that is all the live streaming for today, folks. So check us out in the morning. We'll be talking about OpenShift container storage, 9 a.m. Eastern. I believe that is 1400 UTC. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Stay safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.